Hey guys, we are back updating the power rankings for Big Brother Canada 12 towards the end of week 8. And this has been a pretty interesting end game so far. We had a double eviction last week. Now we're at the final 5, and things should be relatively stable at this point as there are fewer options on the table. And I think plans are pretty well solidified, but we'll get to that soon enough. But there are 7 players to talk about, and let's waste no more time. Let's get right into the video. So starting off at number 7, we have the first boot from this double eviction, and here we have Avery. And this was largely to be expected here, as it did seem like she was on her way out, and sure enough, she was a pretty consensus target there. Nothing too flashy at the end of the day. Now again, I had the same issue with her that I have with another person we'll get into soon enough, in the sense that she kind of went along with taking out her own allies along the way, taking out Matt at her first HOH, taking out Kayla at the second HOH, to where it made sense why she was taken out by the end of it, but it is a shame to see her king go down the drain like this. But she is now out of the game, to where she's here at number 7. Now moving on to number 6, and we have the other boot from the double eviction, and here we have Tola, who did get a pretty bad HOH result here, in the sense that Victoria won the double eviction HOH, and this was pretty much just a shot being taken at the Anthony side, with him clearly being the target there. And obviously you had Todd win the veto, only not to not use it, and it made sense why Tola went out there. Again, not too much to say here, where again, I feel like Tola was someone who was pretty unlikely to win had he gotten to the end, considering he didn't have a lot of allies and a lot of respect within the game, and I felt like a woman was more likely to win this season compared to him. But again, he is now out of the game, to where he's here number 6. And with that, there are 5 people left in the game to talk about, and as usual, I'll be ranking them based on how likely they think they are to win the game based on their current game position. But at number 5, we have the person most likely to go home on Wednesday night, and here we have Victoria, also known as Spicy V. And this was kind of a long time coming, where I said before that I feel like Spicy played a pretty messy game for the most part, namely due to her taking out her own allies left and right in a spot to where they had the numbers at one point. And I feel like this is now largely a consequence of this, where we do see now at the final 5 Anthony winning HOH, had this plan to backdoor her, and that largely went through here to where she's now on her way out. And again, I feel like there's a lot you can blame on her for her eventual boot here. You also have her throwing a sympathy vote onto Bailey during the Avery eviction. So again, a lot of not great stuff here, and it makes sense why she is going to be taken out here, as really now is the best time for Anthony to be taking a shot against Victoria here, as really he needs to take out his biggest jury threat if he wants to have any shot of winning. But obviously that kind of leaves Victoria here, and really there's no way for her to stay at this point. I feel like it'll at least go to a tie to where Anthony would break it to send her out. Otherwise, it'll just be a 2-0 vote to send her out anyway. So again, I feel like Spicy's pretty much cooked here, which is why she's here number 5. Now moving on to number 4, and we have the person who I think is probably the smallest jury threat left on the board, but we do have Todd. And I kind of consider where to put Todd here, as I feel like there is a world where he can get to the end, as he has won the last 3 vetoes in a row. And it's not impossible for someone like him to win out and get respect because of those comp wins. But I just feel like up to this point in the season, he hasn't really been playing the most actively. The fact that he doesn't use the veto during the Avery eviction, while I don't think it's necessarily that bad for him, is probably not the greatest look in the world. And even this week, he was put on the block initially, had to win the veto anyway. So again, I feel like Todd is someone who's probably the smallest jury threat of this final 4. And I feel like while they have some upside in terms of getting some jury votes, I feel like number 4 is a good spot to put them. Now moving on to number 3, and I did debate this placement as well, but at number 3 we do have Lexis, who is currently on the block. Mind you, she's there as the pawn, and she should be pretty safe here. Now moving forward, I think it'll be interesting to see how she navigates through the end game, to where I could realistically see her getting to the final 2. It's just a question of whether she'll actually win by the end of it. As truth be told, I think she's probably one of the smaller jury threats left on the board. And even if she gets to the end against Todd, I feel like if Todd wins his way to the end, I could see a world where this jury just starts to respect Todd more because of those comp wins. So there's definitely a debate for Lexis being even lower here, below Todd in this power ranking. But I feel like inherently right now, I feel like Lexis still has a bit more respect on the jury, and I feel like there's still a path for her to win the game if she were to get towards the end. But at this point, I feel like there are people who definitely have more upside to eventually win the game, which is why she's here at number 3. Now moving on to number 2, and I feel like this Todd 2 should be pretty apparent here. And while there's one person who I think is probably a bigger jury threat right now compared to this other person, I still have more faith in the number 1 person to pull it out by the end of it. But number 2, I do have Bailey. And again, I felt like Bailey was actually in a pretty good spot as of last week, where it did seem like she was going to be primed to do well moving forward. Now, granted, she was on the block during the Avery eviction, and she seemed pretty primed to stay during that. But after the double, I think things started to fall off the rails here, where we do see Anthony winning HOH, and she does agree to go through with this Victoria blindside in the sense that her and Todd would allow the veto to be used in a way to allow Victoria to be backdoored here. So again, she is a part of this plan, and I think she is probably the biggest stray threat left on the board, especially once Victoria goes, as I feel like there's a very strong pro-woman sentiment on the jury right now, and I feel like if Bailey gets to the end against the likes of Todd or even Lexis, I feel like she very clearly wins that final two scenario. And even against Anthony, I think if we are looking at the exit interviews from the jury, I think the jury right now is higher on Bailey compared to Anthony. But at the same time, I feel like Anthony recognizes that and he'll probably try to cut Bailey towards the end. And considering that I have a bit more faith in the way things are going right now for Anthony, I could see a world where Anthony just outplays Bailey by the end of it. Maybe he wins final four veto, sends her out that way. Maybe final three, he wins final HOH and sends out Bailey at that point, breaks up Bailey and Todd. I think Anthony recognizes that he'll need to break up Bailey and Todd before the end, and I do have more faith in Anthony to get the outcome that he wants as opposed to Bailey here. Now again, if Bailey gets to the end, she probably wins, but again, I feel like with the way the season's going right now, the momentum, I feel like I have more faith in the number one person, which leaves Bailey behind at number two. And now at number one, the person I believe is the most likely to win Big Brother Canada 12 coming into the final week is Anthony Douglas. And again, I think Anthony has really shown him to be one of the better players in Big Brother history. And I think this endgame is playing out the way that you would want him to, where he has been sitting behind Victoria for a lot of the game, working alongside her. And now is the point where he has to cut her, and he is able to do it. He's able to win HOH. He's able to work with Bailey and Todd to ensure that Victoria gets backdoored. And that plan's going through. Victoria is going home this week. And I feel like at this point, Anthony's in a pretty strong spot to get towards the end of the game. Now again, jury chances are not looking great right now, where if we are just looking at the exit interviews from the people in the jury, it's not looking great. I feel like Anthony will definitely struggle to win a jury vote in certain situations. And even if he does play well moving forward, I feel like his only surefire win is against Todd at this point, where even against Bailey and Lexis, I think it'll be a massive uphill battle considering the pro-woman sentiment that we have seen from this jury. So I think that'll be a big question mark. Also, how Victoria will react on her way out to Anthony. I think those are big things that will influence how Anthony's trajectory in the game goes. But again, I feel like at this point, I had to praise Anthony for what he's done this week in terms of getting Victoria out. And I feel like he's really taken the reins on the game again to where it makes sense for him to be number one on this power ranking. Now, yes, there's still question marks over whether he'll actually win by the end of it. We'll have to see. But I feel like for now, I feel like it's only best to put him here at number one. And there we go. That'll do it for this week's video. If you like this content, be sure to like and subscribe. Really helps out the channel. Now, after the season ends, I plan to do a player ranking for this season, so you can expect that. I'm covering other shows right now, including Survivor 46, and The Amazing Race 36, and The Circle Season 6, so you can expect weekly power rankings of those shows. I'm on Patreon, so if you want to consider supporting the channel, you can do so by clicking the link in the description, and you can also join the Discord server by also clicking the link in the description. There's a lot of stuff coming your way, but for now, that is the video. See ya.